What lasting impact did colonial economic systems have on decolonization? Imagine a world where countries gain independence but are still caught in economic webs spun decades earlier. That's what happened after many nations freed themselves from colonial rule. Colonial economic systems were built to benefit the colonizers, not the local people. They focused on extracting raw materials like minerals, crops, and resources to send back home. This meant colonies didn't develop their own industries or infrastructure that could support independent growth. Instead, they became dependent on exporting a few commodities, making their economies fragile. When colonies became independent, they inherited these economic setups. Many struggled to diversify their economies because they lacked the industries and skills needed. They remained tied to global trade networks controlled by Western powers, which set terms that often favored the colonizers. For example, African countries after independence found themselves still exporting raw materials at low prices while importing finished goods at high costs. This kept wealth flowing out of their economies and into Western hands. Western companies and banks also kept influence through investments and loans. Many new nations borrowed heavily to build roads, schools, and hospitals. But these debts became a burden because their economies couldn't generate enough income to pay them back. This situation is often called neocolonialism, where economic control continues even after political independence. It meant that many countries remained dependent on their former colonizers for aid, trade, and investment. In many cases, the inherited economic systems caused social and political unrest. Governments faced difficulties creating jobs or funding social programs because their economies were not self-sufficient. For example, in African nations, reliance on exporting a few commodities made them vulnerable to price drops, which hurt their economies and led to instability. These economic challenges slowed their progress towards full sovereignty and made development harder. Colonial powers often designed decolonization to keep economic benefits flowing back to them. They used diplomatic influence and economic ties to stay involved in the new nation's affairs. This meant that even after independence, many countries remained economically dependent on their former colonizers. This legacy of economic dependency shaped international relations, making it harder for developing nations to break free from old patterns. The lasting impact of colonial economic systems is clear. They replaced direct political control with economic structures that kept inequality and dependence alive. This legacy influenced global power dynamics and development paths for decades. Understanding this helps us see why many countries still face economic challenges today. It also shows how the economic roots of decolonization continue to shape international relations and global shifts long after the last colonial flag was lowered.